Hello guys, welcome back to Ideal Bibliotheca. I hope you all are doing well. Today's topic is rise of the minilaterals and this is a part of international relations. We are going to discuss the factors, the advantages, disadvantages and what can be the future of the minilaterals and what exactly is minilaterals. So let's start with the video without wasting any time. The topic is rise of the minilaterals. So the first thing that we need to look at is what is this minilaterals that we are talking of and how do we know about this? See, the first thing that we need to look at is we have a topic called bilateral, we have a term called trilateral. So what is this bilateral? When two countries sign a contract or come into verbal agreement of anything between them, whether it's cultural connection or military connection or defense connection or any connection, but when two countries come into an agreement to support each other, that's called a bilateral agreement. Similarly, we have a trilateral agreement where three countries come together. So what do we mean by this minilateral agreements? Apart from these two, there are a number of countries who have now come into contact with each other for some very small connection, not the complete of military defense and everything, but very small connections for just one particular field. And accordingly, there are 3 countries or 4 countries that come in together. First is, for example, we can take the India's 2+2 dialogue, which is there with Australia, which is there with Japan, and which is there with United States again. Another example that you can take of is the Quad, which is again the Australia, Japan, United States. With this, now what India is coming up with is India, US and Japan trilateral, or India, Australia and Indonesia trilateral. So all of these small minilaterals are coming up, and thus we are going to discuss what is this term and how is this important for our exam. See, when we look at why is this minilateral concept or why is this bilateral, trilateral thing important for an exam is because now Indo-Pacific region holds a very significant topic in our exam, because something or the other keeps working here, and from here any current affair is made up in the question and asked. So what is this minilateral is that now this Indo-Pacific region is gaining a significant hold, and there have been a lot of economic and geostrategic challenges here. So there have been a lot of countries coming together, organizing a meeting to build on the strong bilateral relations so that these countries can share with each other their strength, their other powers and everything to ensure a peaceful, secure, prosperous place and organization to ensure the Indo-Pacific region is well stabilized with all the China powers and with all the monopoly thing that is coming up. This minilateral part can help the countries to ensure that there is significant participation of all the countries. So the first thing that we need to look at is factors. What are the factors that are responsible for the rise of minilaterals? So when we look at the first factor, these are the overall factors that we could come up with, and this you can use in your advantages also, and accordingly you can also tilt them into disadvantages if asked. So when we look at the first factor, it is reversing of the globalization. See, now what is happening is initially every country would keep a protectionist measure and accordingly work. But with enhancing in the globalization, with all the countries coming together, now they've realized with the peak in the globalization that it's not just that countries have to be globalized, because after COVID and after everything, there has been scenarios where countries are tending to move inwards and to just keep up with themselves or the nearby countries or some very few countries in coordination, because overall when we look at all the countries, every country looks into their interest, and accordingly this globalization thing is again moving far away. So this is what the reversing of the globalization, countries looking inwards, countries looking towards themselves, and countries focusing on the major parts, major countries, is one of the factor which is removing all the big countries and big institutions like IOC or IORA or G20 and everything. Apart from that, this is coming to reversing of the globalization. Second is, see, easy to converge. How is it easy to converge? See, when you have, for example, let's take G20 countries. Okay, so there are 20 countries overall, and accordingly everybody has different interests, right? Everybody has their own issues, their own things to face. Like India might also have an economically challenged issues, but similarly another country might also have economic issues, but both the issues and their interests might differ. So accordingly G20 might not have that much of the facility, which if three countries, for example, if India, Australia and Japan come together, they can look into just three of them economic interests, their defense interests, their strategic interests and everything, and accordingly they can function only in these three countries. So this is what we see, that yes, this is one of the factor why multilateralism is coming more into picture. Then we have working on uncertainties. Now what happens when we look at the uncertainties is that when there are partners of larger groupings, what is happening again, their interests are different. Then when their interests are different, for example, see here India might be a part of this and Russia might also be a part of this G20, right? But now what is happening is, suppose Russia has started moving towards China, India has started moving towards US. So this might enhance, this might widen the gap between both the countries. Now both are part of G20, but both might not want to mingle together into the work and everything. So somewhere the functioning between the uncertainties are coming up. So now what we can do is, India and Russia can form their own treaty, their own agreement, or they can include other countries and accordingly form one agreement and accordingly bring into this, so that they can work on their uncertainties, their differences, and accordingly function effectively in this G20 countries also. Then what do we have? Informal dialogue. See, more the number of nations, more would be the formality, because there has to be one structure, one set of rules that can be followed by every country, because else it's going to be a very haphazard thing. So, but when we have 2 or 3 countries together, informal dialogues is possible. Accordingly, overcoming the challenges of multilateralism, what is happening is all the ideological fighting that a country has to be this. For example, US has one ideology that it follows, Russia has another ideology that it follows, and China has again a different thing. So they all might have different ideology and everything, and this might lead to things into discussions, into disputes. Another point that can come up is, for example, let's take UNSC. There are 5 major countries accordingly which are functioning this, but in that maybe US is the main role, playing the main role, or US and China might now be emerging as the major countries, let's say hypothetically. So now what is happening is, this UNSC is run by major US and major China, and others are just being a part of this. So this is what multilateralism is bringing. But if India, if US and if Australia are just there wouldn't be any chance of US taking the major role between them or Australia taking the major role between them. All of the 3 would have the equal chance, equitable chance, because whichever country is good in whatever, they would bring that into the picture, into this agreement. And the last that we come up is institutional sclerosis. Now what is this term that we look at it? See, when institutions come together, they tend to have an objective and they tend to have other vision and mission that they create and abide by, that they will follow this. So what happens is, when these institutions fail to adapt or change accordingly, for example, if we look at the World Health Organization, after all this COVID that came up, the world suffered and everything, this World Health Organization was raised fingers at, and this was told that this organization is not able to adapt to the changing needs. So the global challenges with all the climate change, the data privacy, the cyber security and every other thing, any other aspect where this institution which is created is not able to serve the purpose of it because of the changing dimensions, is what is institutional sclerosis. So this is one reason why multilaterals are coming up, where some countries come together to decide on a particular field, and accordingly they work on it according to the changes that are emerging in the nearby surroundings. So these are the factors. Again, for the advantages, you can write that yes, it is easy to converge, it is easy to work on the uncertainties between the countries, it is easy because the informal dialogues are there, institutional sclerosis problem is getting away, the challenges of multilateralism. Again, in the advantages you can write this. When we look at the disadvantages, what you can write is that the reverse globalization that is coming up might take the countries back to the liberalization, to the privatization, and keeping them into just the secured part, or might take them more into the extremes to what the economy was before all of these three LPG thing came up. So this can be one major disadvantage of multilateralism, or others could be that when 2-3 countries come together, and apart from that they will just think of their own good, and accordingly there will be many groupings instead of one world as a whole, and this might create a problem in the future where it will be countries versus countries, they having a war in themselves, or there can be small groupings, again creating a potential for any other disputes or disagreements. So these could be the disadvantages, and accordingly this is the overall analysis of the minilaterals. This can be important because this is again a part of Indo-Pacific. So this was it for today's videos, guys. I hope you could understand the essence of the topic and how vital it is for our exam. For more such videos, you can subscribe to Ideal Bibliotheca, and for daily MCQs and other relevant notes, you can follow at UPSC Target. The link is in the description. Thank you so much.